Now, since the start of the year, there have been 104 serious data incidents in the United States, which have resulted in companies losing vital records essential for business. As Hurricane Rita also hurries itself towards the United States coastline, we thought we'd take a look at how companies maybe can restore their data easily. Joining us is Brian Anderson. He's the CMO of Avamar Technologies. Brian, thanks so much, Dee, for coming in. And at the moment, insurance companies are measuring the cost of business interruption from Katrina. Just on that one event alone, when companies have all their databases today on hard disks and computer systems, how much damage has been done from that one event? Can we ascertain it?
To put a hard number on it is obviously very difficult, but clearly business data is the lifeblood of corporations today. Unfortunately, the weakest link in the protection of that data has been a decades-old process for backing up to tape. And it's just, to measure the direct impact is literally in the millions.
But for all those businesses that have their offices have been completely flattened and wrecked in that region, what has happened to all their data?
Well, for the most part, every company has some form of backup and recovery strategy. As I mentioned, it's rather typical that they're using a tape-based process, which means a couple of days to back up the data, put that data on a truck, in the tape, and then send it off to an off-site location.
So it's actually a hard physical process. You literally take a tape and you stick it on a truck and ship it to some safe house.
Correct.
Seems a strange way to do things.
Well, unfortunately, it is a rather archaic way to do things, especially in light of moving things around electronically today, but you have to do that in a very particular manner.
So, which is where you guys say you come in.
Exactly. Avamar has a patented solution for data protection using disk, and we have a rather unique way of looking at it. We actually eliminate the redundant bits at the source. So we only send the unique bits, and that results in 90% less storage, 95% less network traffic, and 100% integrity and restore, versus tape, which can fail about 35% of the times.
Guy's got a question for you, Brian.
In terms of how long it takes to reload tape back up again, if we have a situation as we do now in the southern parts of the United States, how long will it take those businesses to get back up and running off tape, and how many failures will we get as a result of that, and what is the regulatory issue when that tape fails?
Sure, and clearly it varies from company to company. Some companies control their tapes very closely. Some companies have those tapes off-site, through third-party vendors, and in fact sometimes those tapes don't come back at all. Once their tapes come back, you then have the Russian roulette game of, I load the tape, does it in fact work? As I mentioned, on average these tapes fail about 30–35% of the time. So you do have the challenge that can literally be days, weeks in some situations to do a recovery if you're doing it in the classic tape-based methodology.
The more current solution is obviously to have an off-site storage site which you simply transfer data to via some sort of broadband connection, sort of high-speed kilowatt connection. How many companies now have updated solutions in the Western world, and how many companies are still existing on old type of solutions, and which sectors is there a sort of breakdown that I can use and look at from an investor's point of view to try and make some sort of decisions? If we get a problem, who's going to be suffering here and who's not?
Sure. So clearly most corporations are now looking at new and unique ways, such as Avamar's, to do disk-based data protection. Unfortunately, we're one of the only companies that reduce the data at the source, having those incredible gains we talked about before. We have about 100 customers throughout the world right now, and certainly that customer base is growing as well as our partner base. Clearly, the financial sector tends to be the early adopters. They're already used to moving funds electronically, and this is not very different from electronic funds transfer. So corporations that have kind of taken a more progressive look at how do I protect my business data in a unique fashion to reduce my backup window and ensure 100% integrity are those that have the foresight to use this type of technology.
Brian, good morning. How much does this cost? And on top of that also, I just forgot the second part of that. Let's just leave it with the cost. How much does it cost?
Sure. So when you look at cost, obviously costs vary from company to company depending on what they're looking to protect, the speed at which they're looking to do recovery versus backup. On average, though, we find total cost of ownership when you add people and resources and physical movement and all the other things, that on average tape is about $50 to $60 US per gigabyte. Whereas with an Avamar solution, we're finding on average more in the neighborhood of $25 to $35 per gigabyte.
Okay, thanks very much indeed for doing this, Brian. Good to see you. Brian Anderson,
Thank
CMO
you.
at Avamar Technologies.